Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again here with another video. Hope you enjoyed the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Any comments, thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again here with another video. Today I'm replying back to a comment that I got online, and the person was asking me could I do a video or a brief discussion on why he's claiming that when his chain teeth get shorter that it doesn't cut as good. Okay, so that's quite possible, and there's only two reasons that I can think of, and one is that it's not sharpened properly. That's number one. So all right, let's say it is. We rule out that your chain is just as sharp. The other thing is that a brand new chain is much wider at the top, and as we get down to this witness mark, it's roughly about 0.2 of a millimetre skinnier. So being a slightly narrower kerf, the chain will actually cut through the timber a lot easier when it gets down to like this. This chain here cuts through timber just like a new one. Hard to believe, but no, it's true. Why? And why can some people have problems? When you've got a brand new chain, your depth of your raker or depth gauge or limiter, your tooth is limited by the amount of timber that can be cut by the depth of the raker. At brand new, it's roughly about 0.65 of a millimetre. By the time it gets to this stage, it's about 1.4 millimetres on a progressive slanted gauge like this steel one. If you are using one of the old-fashioned type gauges invented by Joseph Cox in Portland, Oregon in 1953, I think it was, and put a worldwide patent on it, it's only going to take off 0.65 of a millimetre for a 3/8 chain. So if you're only going to take off 0.65 of a millimetre, this will never cut very good. It needs to be double that at least. And using a progressive depth gauge, placing it on top, I've measured this with the feeler gauges and I've got 1.4 millimetres. So that's more than double. And this chain cuts correct. What you have to be extremely careful of, and I've marked this one, this is for standard 3/8 chain. And it has a hard and soft setting. And you can file straight over the top of the plate because it's harder than the file. Can't do that on the Oregon ones or some of the other El Cheapo ones because they're soft metal. All the steel ones are hardened, as well as this one, it's hardened. You can file straight over the top. So if you're a little bit unsure and you're 100% and it's not cutting right, maybe you've got the wrong depth gauge. But there is another way of checking, and all you need is a set of feeler gauges. So if you've got a set of feeler gauges, they're not worth much. It's not a bad idea that you go out and get yourself some. And if you place a straight edge over a couple teeth and then you proceed to make sure that it's sitting flat, what you've got to be careful of, really careful of, is that the pivot point on this now is very sensitive. You put a bit of pressure on there and you'll see the tooth just kick up. This is the reason why you need a much deeper depth, because the moment that this tooth gets a little bit of friction on it, it will just kick up, restricting how much timber can be cut, and hence the reason why you need 1.4 millimetres by the time you get down to this stage. So when you place a straight edge on top, what I like to do is I've got the chain sitting in this mechanism here, and down below what I'm going to do is place a weight so that when I put the, I'm just going to put this weight, it weighs a couple of kilos. So anytime that I want to check the gauge, I will put a weight on there. So now the teeth sit very good. And it's just a matter of putting that over the top of several teeth and placing the feeler gauge underneath. 1.4 millimeters, that is. So get yourself a good little straight edge, something like this, just a little small one. And you could even use, a lot of people, if you still got one of these, you could put that on there and use that as a straight edge too, as long as you've got something that's dead straight. Your chain will have no trouble cutting provided it's sharp and you've got the clearance of about 1.4 millimeter by the time you get down to here. So if we say a brand new chain that the depth is 0.65 of a millimeter, you could roughly work that out, that if the tooth was half worn down, it's going to be around a millimeter in depth. So what I would tell for those people that are not too sure, these gauges are specific to the chain. So when it says 3/8, that's standard 3/8. It ain't 3/8 low profile. There's 5 in the series that still manufacture. They've only been manufacturing these since 2017. You've got FL1 for 1/4 inch, FL2 for 3/8 low profile, FL3 for 0.325, and FL4 for 3/8 standard, and FL5 for 404 chain. So you've got to make sure you're using that. The still gauges are a little bit more aggressive than the Husqvarna, because I've got plenty of the Husqvarna gauges, progressive depth gauges in the Husky ones. They're not as hardened like the still. The still have got a Rockwell hardness of 62, so you can run the file straight over the top. A man by the name of Ray Carlton invented the progressive depth gauge in the 60s and put a worldwide patent on it, and everyone just copies that today. Unfortunately, still sell this type of gauge, which is outdated. It's outdated. It's okay for the first couple of filings, but by the time you start getting halfway worn chain, you really don't want to use that gauge. That's old technology, really old. And even this is old technology, but it works. And the way that it actually works is that it sits on top of the tooth. The gauge goes on a slant all the way to the tie bar here. And I've got a set of 5 of them that I manufactured myself. And if you make, and I'll show them to you. So the largest one that I made was for 404, which is that one there. Then they go all the way up to 1/4 inch Pico. And what you will notice is that the larger they get, you'll find that this part in the middle here, this little notch gets longer. You'll notice that the legs grow longer. So look at the difference of this notch. It's much longer. Then you go to 3/8. So that's 404. This is 3/8. And it goes to 325, then 3/8 low profile, then 1/4 inch. So I just use these for checking. They're made out of stainless steel. They won't rust. They're not meant to file over the top. They're purely designed so that I can use them for checking purposes and checking only. And that's what you've got to be careful of when you buy a depth gauge, that the depth gauge is only used for checking purposes. It is not meant to be filed on top. All the cheap ones out there are all made out of mild steel. They're only good for checking. They're absolutely no good to file. You'll file the gauge away in no time. Whereas something like this, you place it on top and you can visually see that that's not protruding. So I can tell it doesn't need filing. And it's so easy just to run the file over the top. Hard and soft setting. So do yourself a favour, go out, get yourself those gauges, you'll have no trouble. So just to recap to that person that wrote to me and asked me, why do teeth don't cut as good when they wear down like this? There's only 2 reasons. The first is maybe your sharpening's dropped off and they're not razor sharp. If you turn around and tell me that your sharpening hasn't dropped off and they're perfectly sharp, there's only one other reason, and that is this depth here. So from brand new, we go from 0.65 of a millimetre to 1.4 millimetres in depth. It's progressive. Progressive. As the tooth gets shorter, the depth gets deeper because of the rocking motion. Because if we look here at the actual where the rivet is, you'll find out that the tooth is behind that rivet. So that rocking motion it gets very, very sensitive to rocking motion. And it's the rocking motion that all chainsaw chains have when they strike timber. They kick up like that. And it's that kicking up effect that has this limit on what the tooth can bite into. So all the teeth rock up and down. You can see one of the videos that I've got on one of my channels in slow motion, how that works. So that's probably as much as what I can say. Just make sure that you're using a progressive depth gauge and you're filing your gullets out as well, because they help dispose of the chips. If you've got little big humps and bumps here, it's not the best idea. You want to sort of flatten them out with a file. Anyway, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.